When people talk about Jeffrey Epstein's properties, they usually mention his private island or his Manhattan mansion. But far from the ocean, hidden in the high desert of New Mexico, sat another estate, one that received far less attention, yet maybe just as mysterious. It was called Zorro Ranch. Located outside the small town of Stanley, about an hour from Santa Fe, the property stretched across thousands of acres of isolated land. From above, it looked less like a residence and more like a compound. Multiple buildings, long private roads, and wide open terrain in every direction. Unlike the island, there were no nearby tourists, no surrounding neighborhoods, no casual visitors, just desert, sky, and distance. Epstein purchased the ranch in the 1990s and spent years expanding it. Construction added guest houses, barns, offices, and other structures across the property. Some visitors described it as luxurious, but strangely quiet, almost empty at times despite its size. Others noted how difficult it was to reach without clear directions. The remoteness created a natural barrier. What happened there stayed there. Former workers said access was tightly controlled. Visitors were screened. Staff were assigned specific areas and often discouraged from wandering. Certain buildings were reportedly off-limits without permission, and because of the property's scale, it was possible for different groups to be on the ranch at the same time without ever crossing paths. One detail that fueled speculation was the presence of advanced communications equipment and security systems. Large private estates often have surveillance for safety, but some accounts suggested the monitoring was unusually extensive. Another point of interest was the ranch's infrastructure. There were water systems, generators, and facilities that allowed the property to operate independently for long periods. In other words, it didn't rely heavily on nearby towns or utilities. It could function on its own. That level of self-sufficiency made it feel less like a home and more like a private enclave. Epstein rarely spoke publicly about the ranch, and very few photos from inside were ever released. Unlike his New York residence, which was visible to neighbors and media, Zorro Ranch remained largely hidden from view. Satellite images showed construction over the years, including new buildings appearing without public explanation. Some observers pointed out unusual architectural choices, structures placed far apart, long access roads, and layouts designed to maximize privacy. Because the land covered thousands of acres, entire sections of the property could remain unseen from any single vantage point. After Epstein's arrest in 2019, investigators searched the ranch as part of the broader case. Reports confirmed that agents removed materials and examined buildings across the property. But as with his other locations, few details were released about what was found. There was no public trial to present evidence, no comprehensive report describing the contents of the ranch, just fragments of information, witness statements, legal filings, and speculation. Some individuals who had visited described the atmosphere as unsettling, not because of anything visible, but because of the isolation. At night, the area becomes almost completely dark. No city lights, no traffic noise, only desert wind and open land. It's the kind of place where activity could go unnoticed for miles. Questions also arose about why Epstein chose such a remote location. Privacy was one explanation. Large ranches in the Southwest are often used as retreats, but critics argued that the level of seclusion went beyond typical privacy. It created distance from oversight, distance from witnesses, distance from scrutiny. After Epstein's death, the ranch was placed on the market. For a time, it sat largely unused, a sprawling property with a notorious history. Eventually, it was sold, and new owners announced plans to redevelop the land. Yet the past cannot simply be erased. Structures remain, roads remain, and whatever happened there remains part of the broader story. Unlike the island, which became a global symbol, Zorro Ranch stayed in the shadows. Few documentaries focused on it. Few journalists gained access. Few official disclosures explained its role, which leaves one lingering question. Why is the property that covered thousands of acres the one people know the least about? Today, the desert is quiet again. Wind moves across empty land. Buildings stand against the horizon. From a distance, it looks peaceful. But for many observers, Zorro Ranch represents a hidden chapter in a case filled with unanswered questions, a place far from public view, far from cameras, and perhaps far from the full truth. Because sometimes the most important locations in a story aren't the ones everyone talks about.